What if Luffy's fruit is beyond just about rubber? What if the whole point has always been his soul, and that's why Gear 5th acts the way it does? When you think about how shadows work in One Piece, how Totland geeks out like Looney Tunes, and even the Going Merry have its own spirit, it's probably Oda hinting that Luffy could toy with the soul of his environment, bending reality in the process. There's gotta be something behind the scenes that lets Luffy go full Toon Force, and if that's true, why was the Nika fruit designed this way in the first place? Maybe the rubber body was never the real ability at all. Maybe it's just the byproduct of what happens when Luffy's soul is free to stretch. Oda even teased this back in Thriller Bark. Moria treated shadows like second souls, and when he reshaped a shadow, the body changed with it, as we've seen with ores, a reflection of the soul. So what if the Nika fruit works the same way? The body looks rubbery, not because rubber is the core power, but because the soul itself is flexible. Doesn't that make Gear 5th feel less like Toon Force and more like Mahito from Jujutsu Kaisen? This isn't my first time on this hill. I've been saying Luffy and Mahito are basically power twins, and trust me, I've taken straight up artillery fire for even suggesting it. I still stand by it though. But today we're revisiting the whole script after that brand new One Piece episode just dropped. We're coming back with fresh eyes, a new angle, and a deep dive into how Oda's been low-key building this theme in the background. Because if you caught that chapter that the episode was based on, you knew this conversation was inevitable. But then we hit the 15 cents and some change question. Why rubber? Rubber is the perfect vessel for what this fruit really is. And at the end of the day, rubber ain't just a material. It's a walking metaphor. Freedom, unbreakable spirit, and adaptability. The same qualities that makes Nika, Nika. But then there's the tougher question. How do you tie rubber with the sun? Why would a fruit tied to the sun god have anything to do with rubber in the first place? If you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably heard me bring up the idea that souls in One Piece are shown like Hitodama from the Japanese folklore. We've actually seen Oda draw souls before. Brook's soul looks exactly like a Hitodama. Same with Lao Ji when he memed his way into a near-death experience. Or do you guys think we shouldn't take the whole Lao Ji thing seriously? So if souls are already shown as little fireballs, what does that actually mean for Sun God Nika? Maybe Sun God doesn't mean literal sunlight at all. Maybe it's about a soul burning like a sun. And that reframes the whole fruit again, after it was reframed during Wano. And when you look back, the sun has always been shorthand for freedom in One Piece. Fisher Tiger and the Sun Pirates used it to cover up the Celestial Dragon slave brand. Fisherman Island is lit by the sunlight tree Eve, literally bringing the dream of the surface down to the depths of the ocean. And in Wano, the defeat of Kaido is described as the dawn that Toki prophesized. The sun has always been the symbol of liberation. Even the rubber part ties in. In the real world, heat can make materials rubbery. Polymers soften, and raw rubber gets vulcanized into something strong and elastic. So, if a soul is basically fire, rubber is the perfect physical expression. And all this talk about souls behaving like fire actually lines up when you look back at how Luffy first started experimenting with this fruit. Gear 2nd is first presented as blood-pumping biology, but what if the steam was actually his spirit burning hotter, syncing with his body? Gear 3rd could be chalked up as a balloon trick, but Luffy's chibi form makes more sense if his soul overshot its limit and just snapped back. And after the time skip, he has become accustomed to using Gear 3rd to the point that he no longer faces those drawbacks. Gear 2nd and 3rd were him stretching his soul through his rubber body without realizing it. But in Gear 4th, I think the facade begins to crack, and the real Nika power starts to peek through. Gear 4th is described as Luffy inflating muscles and coating them with hockey. But if you see the fruit as granting the user's soul tangibility, with rubber representing the physical form of the soul's freedom, resilience, and adaptability, each Gear 4th form is simply like a different setup or mode of his spirit. Bound Man shows his soul projected widely throughout his body, boosting his strength, his defense, and mobility all at once. Tank Man is like his spirit condensing inward, emphasizing durability and counterforce. It's less mobile, but the density of his will makes him an unstoppable wall. Snake Man is like the opposite. His spirit is just streamlined for speed and precision, but he sacrifices durability, but his will drives his punches to accelerate and track opponents beyond what rubber should allow. Gear 5th is when the soul just completely breaks the fourth wall of his own body and starts projecting directly onto reality, violating the laws of physics, just like how you should violate the like button and the subscribe button if you're enjoying this topic so far. And if that seems like too big of a leap, Oda has already used the same trick with Big Mom, kind of. Her homies act like fully fleshed out characters from Degrassi because they are literally infused with their soul, and the souls of the citizens of Whole Cake Island, since the island operates on that same system. That's how Oda created an island that feels like a classic Disney movie, and that connects straight back to Shinto. In Shinto, everything has kami, or spirit. Trees, rivers, tools. We've already seen it hinted at with Kobaterman, where ships can develop will and personality. So it's kind of like Luffy's awakening is tapping into the same spiritual mechanic Oda's been threading into the story for years. And his hair in Gear 5th, I think, works the same way. Think of it like a thought bubble in a cartoon. Whatever he imagines pops into reality, and that actually lines up with how hair is treated in Shinto. It's not just for show, it's about holding Tama, or spirit energy, an extension of the soul. So when Luffy pulls a bucket of paint out of his hair like he's about to flex on Mihawk in the paint game, it is not just for shits and giggles, it's his soul using hair as the outlet. Circling back to the kami idea we talked about earlier, Oda's been exploring this theme in other ways for years, like the breath of all things and the voice of all things, where certain people hear the will of the world itself. If everything has a soul, it even reframes how we think about poneglyphs as vessels carrying a will or a voice from the past, much like my last video here.